I'm posting this from the living room that used to be ours, drinking black coffee from the mug she gave me the first Christmas we spent together, and I can't decide if the ceramic feels warm or cold in my hand. That confused temperature sums up the last 4 months of my life better than any therapist could. Hannah and I met at a trivia night 3 years ago. She knew every answer about obscure 90s cartoons. I nailed the sports section, and we split the prize pitcher of beer like we'd been a team forever. She moved into my apartment a year later, brought her rescue cat, her plants, her wild laugh, and a certainty that we were building something permanent. I'm not a fairy tale guy, but even I caught myself Googling ring styles after she fell asleep. Then late last winter, she came home with this fierce, restless energy, tossed her bag on the couch, and told me she'd been thinking a lot about personal growth. The phrase made me pause FIFA and look up. Personal growth, in Hannah speak, meant a half marathon or a pottery class. I asked what new hobby she wanted to try. She sat on the coffee table, too close, all eye contact. She said she loved me, loved us, but she felt like she'd missed out on experiences because we'd coupled up in our mid-20s. She wanted an open relationship. I've seen enough Reddit cautionary tales to know how that script ends for most people. I told her straight up, if she was asking permission to hook up with other guys, she should be honest that it might break us. She swore it wasn't about anyone specific, just a desire for exploration. She even quoted Dan Savage and said it could make our bond stronger. I didn't say yes that night. I asked for a week to think. During that week, I played out every scenario in my head. Me waiting while she went on dates, awkward STI tests, friends treating me like a doormat, or me resenting her and turning into a paranoid creep. But I also remembered the promise we'd made to talk through big things rather than slam doors. So I searched forums, bought The Ethical Slut on Kindle, and tried to separate knee-jerk jealousy from valid concern. When we sat down again, I laid out ground rules. Absolute honesty about partners, condoms always, overnights only if discussed first, and we both retained veto power if something felt off. She agreed instantly, almost too quickly. She kissed me hard, thanked me for being progressive, and that very night started swiping on dating apps. 2 weeks later, she had her first date with a guy named Jordan. She came home glowing, said it was just dinner, and nothing happened. I reminded her that honesty wasn't optional. She confessed they'd made out in his car. I didn't sleep much that night. Over the next month, she lined up a rotation. Jordan on Tuesdays, an amateur musician named Chris on Fridays, and occasional drinks with a gym bro who called himself Zeus on Snapchat. She kept the rules. Condoms, no surprise sleepovers, so technically I had no grounds to complain. But the apartment felt crowded with male ghosts. Her phone chimed and I saw notifications from emojis I didn't recognize. She still cuddled with me, still laughed at my dumb jokes. But a slice of her attention was always outside the room. Our friends tried to stay neutral. Most didn't even know, because we agreed discretion mattered. The exception was Lily, her best friend since freshman orientation, the maid of honor in waiting. Lily visited often, flopping on our couch, ordering pad thai, and listening to Hannah debrief about the spicy life. At first, Lily seemed supportive, but I noticed her glances when Hannah bragged about Jordan's lips or Zeus's abs. Lily would bite her straw, look at me, and mouth a silent sorry. One Saturday, Hannah left for brunch with Chris, promising to be back by 5. Lily texted asking if I was around. She had a Netflix password issue. I told her to come over. She arrived with cupcakes and an apology for intruding. We sat on opposite ends of the couch, navigating the labyrinth of Netflix menus, but mostly we talked. She admitted all this open relationship talk felt like déjà vu. Hannah had a habit of chasing shiny things, whether hobbies or people, and getting bored fast. Lily worried I'd get burned. That afternoon became a pattern. Whenever Hannah had a date, Lily found a reason to swing by. Borrowing a book, returning Tupperware, asking for cat photos. Nothing happened at first, but conversations stretched longer. Our knees found each other under the coffee table, and one evening, when Hannah was out late, Lily kissed me. I broke the kiss, heart pounding, and reminded her of the rules: honesty, consent, mutual agreement. Lily nodded, cheeks red, and said she wasn't looking for a fling. She liked me, had for a while, and hated seeing me treated like a safety net. We talked until after midnight. By the end, I'd decided if the relationship was open, it had to be open in both directions. The next day, I told Hannah. She froze, spoon halfway to her mouth. Then she laughed and said, "Lily, seriously?" I kept calm and reminded her these were the rules she'd championed. She shrugged and said okay, but she didn't think Lily could handle casual. I said it wasn't casual to me. Lily and I scheduled our first actual date for the following Friday. We chose a sushi place across town where we wouldn't bump into mutual friends. I felt nerves I hadn't felt since college. To my surprise, Hannah offered advice on what shirt looked best and told me to have fun. Part of me thought she was fine because she assumed it would fizzle. The date went great. Conversation flowed. We laughed about old college stories. She stole my last piece of tuna sashimi, and when we walked to my car, she intertwined her fingers with mine like it was the most natural thing. We agreed to keep it slow, but by the third date we'd slept together. The intimacy felt different from anything with Hannah recently. Focused, present, equal. I kept Hannah informed each step. She pretended indifference but tapped her foot when I mentioned specific compliments Lily gave me. Meanwhile, Hannah's own roster hit snags. Jordan ghosted her, Chris moved cities, and Zeus turned out to have a girlfriend. Hannah's calendar opened up just as mine started to fill. 3 months after the open agreement, I noticed Hannah scrolling my phone while I showered. I asked what she was looking for. She demanded to read my texts with Lily in case we were talking behind her back. I reminded her trust was essential. She said I was hiding something. I handed her the phone. She read weeks of affectionate messages, and her face crumpled like she'd stepped on broken glass. She threw the phone on the bed and said, "This isn't what I signed up for." She accused me of emotional cheating, said open was supposed to be purely physical. I pointed out she'd never said that. She argued it was implied. I disagreed. The conversation spiraled until she shouted that I'd betrayed her, that I'd used the agreement as an excuse to steal her best friend. I replied I hadn't stolen anything. Lily made her own choices. Hannah stormed out, slamming the door hard enough to rattle plaster. The next morning, she sent a long text. We were done, she was coming to get her stuff, and she expected me to move out since the lease was in her name. I calmly reminded her my name was also on the lease because I'd paid half the deposit. She fired back that if I made this messy, she'd tell everyone I cheated. That threat flipped a switch in me. I'd played fair, swallowed jealousy, followed every guideline she'd proposed. If she wanted messy, I'd show her what messy looked like. Tidy, legal, and devastating. First, I screenshotted every conversation where she asked for non-monogamy, where she celebrated hookups, where she thanked me for being understanding. Then I documented her rotations timelines, all laid over our agreement's dates. I compiled a neat folder labeled Evidence. Next, I called the landlord, explained the breakup, and asked how to handle joint tenancy. He said either party could buy out the other's share, or we could both stay to the end. I scheduled a meeting for the following Tuesday. When Hannah arrived to pack clothes, she brought Lily's spare key, demanding it back. Lily handed it over personally, smiling the entire time. Hannah's expression could have cracked granite. She pulled me aside, lowered her voice, and said, Lily would regret backstabbing sisterhood. I asked if that threat extended to me. She didn't answer. That evening, Hannah posted a vague book status about betrayal and narcissists. Mutual friends messaged asking what happened. I stayed silent. Lily did too. The next day, Hannah published a long Reddit post on a relationship advice sub under a throwaway account, claiming her boyfriend had cheated with her best friend under the guise of openness, ignoring her boundaries. She painted herself as a saint who tried to salvage things. Unfortunately for her, I was a lurker on that sub. I recognized her writing style, the cat's name, and the timeline down to the brunch dates. I replied with my own account, attaching redacted screenshots proving she'd initiated openness first, that physical and emotional involvement were never limited, that she'd boasted about multiple partners before I even kissed Lily. The sub's verdict tilted heavily in my favor. Hannah deleted her post within hours, but not before I saved the link. Friends began messaging me privately, some neutral, some apologetic for assuming. I never badmouthed Hannah beyond factual clarification. She, meanwhile, texted me furious paragraphs about public humiliation. I responded once. Boundaries include not lying about me. After that, I muted her. Tuesday, I met the landlord with a printed spreadsheet of rent payments, showing I'd covered full rent twice when Hannah's paycheck was late. He agreed either she reimbursed me for half the deposit, or we'd prorate her share and have her removed from the lease. She refused in a flurry of angry emails until he reminded her small claims court favored meticulous documentation. She finally conceded, transferring the money under the subject line, blood money. I smiled and forwarded the receipt to the landlord. Moving day came. She collected furniture she'd bought, leaving the apartment looking like half a dollhouse. Lily and I spent the weekend rearranging, filling empty corners with thrift store finds and IKEA shelves. The place felt smaller but lighter. A week later, Hannah tried a last maneuver. She emailed Lily a list of grievances, claiming Lily had broken girl code, that the friendship was salvageable if Lily dumped me. Lily replied with one sentence, "I choose integrity over code." Blocked. The revenge felt complete, but I'm not delusional. Heartbreak doesn't dissolve because you win the moral scoreboard. I booked therapy sessions to unpack the resentment and my part in letting things drag. Lily started therapy too, wanting to navigate the minefield of dating someone fresh out of a messy breakup. We set boundaries, weekly check-ins, honesty about triggers, no comparing ourselves to Hannah's carousel. 3 months have passed since Hannah moved out. She still pops up in group chats occasionally, posting manic memes about self-care. I scroll past. I hear Jordan got back with an ex, Chris is across the country, and Zeus's girlfriend dumped him after finding DMs. Patterns recycle when lessons don't land. Last weekend, Lily and I hosted friends for game night. Someone brought up the open relationship gone wrong post they'd seen on Reddit. They laughed about how the comments roasted the original poster. I exchanged a glance with Lily across the table, a private signal. We didn't out ourselves. We just enjoyed the quiet knowledge that sometimes the internet actually sides with the truth. After everyone left, Lily and I sat on the floor amid empty cider bottles and playing cards. She asked if I ever missed Hannah. I thought honestly and said I missed the Hannah who sang Mariah Carey in the shower, not the version who weaponized openness. Lily nodded, resting her head on my shoulder. I won't pretend I'm healed, but I'm not bitter either. Revenge wasn't broadcasting screenshots. It was refusing to be rewritten as the villain and making sure consequences matched actions. It was choosing a stable lease over dramatic exits, measured replies over angry tirades, and building something genuine with someone who values reciprocity. Hannah wanted possibilities. She got them. She also got the responsibility that comes with freedom. I took her at her word, played by the rules, and when she tried to flip the board, I handed her the rule book with her notes in the margins. That's not cheating. That's finishing the game she started and walking away with the piece she never bothered to guard. The mug beside me is finally empty. The ceramic is definitely cold now. But outside the window, the city lights flicker like unblinking eyes, and somewhere out there Hannah is probably telling another story about a guy who couldn't handle her truth. That's fine. I've got my own story, told here in full dimension, archived in screenshots, witnessed by the friend who became more. The cat jumps onto my lap, purrs, and Lily calls from the kitchen asking if I want more coffee. Think I'll switch to tea. My parents found out the condensed version when I visited for my dad's birthday. They're old school, married 35 years, and the idea of negotiated non-monogamy made them frown like they'd bitten lemons. I didn't bother defending the concept. I simply explained the timeline and showed them the rent receipts when Mom worried I'd be left homeless. Dad put a hand on my shoulder and said mistakes happen, but character shows in how you document the truth. He's an accountant. Paper trails are his love language. It felt oddly reassuring. Mark, one of our mutual friends, tried to mediate. He invited me for beers, said Hannah was spiraling, that she felt humiliated and abandoned, and maybe an apology would calm things down. I asked what exactly I should apologize for. Mark said feelings don't need logic. I answered that accusations without evidence do. He looked tired, admitted he'd only heard her side first, and asked to see my screenshots. I refused. Weaponizing receipts casually felt petty. Instead, I encouraged him to ask Hannah for timestamps. He later told me she changed the subject. Weeks later, out of nowhere, Hannah requested a face-to-face meeting. Curiosity outweighed caution, so I agreed to meet at a quiet coffee shop near the old apartment, public enough to keep us civil. She arrived late, sunglasses on indoors, trembling slightly. She didn't order a drink. She said she'd come to retrieve closure. Her exact words. I nodded and waited. She said she still believed emotional exclusivity should have been implicit. I replied that if something is implicit, it should still survive daylight. She asked if Lily and I were serious. I said yes. She asked if I ever loved her. I said I did, deeply. She teared up, muttered that love shouldn't feel like punishment, then left. The encounter lasted 15 minutes and cost me one lukewarm latte. Life, predictably, filled the vacuum. Lily and I took a weekend trip to the coast. Just us, no mutual acquaintances. We hiked trails that smelled of pine and salt, cooked simple meals in an Airbnb cabin, and talked about everything except Hannah. One night, sitting by a dwindling fire pit, Lily confessed she'd been afraid our relationship was built from rebound rubble. I told her rubble can be repurposed into stronger foundations if you sort the pieces and toss the cracked ones. She laughed, said that was the most contractor-sounding romance line ever, and kissed me beneath a sky so clear it hurt. Back home, my therapist asked what revenge means to me now that the dust is settling. I said it used to mean proving Hannah wrong. Then it was about protecting my reputation. Now it's about living a life that doesn't revolve around someone else's chaos. She smiled and said that sounded a lot like recovery. I still keep the evidence folder, but it's on an external drive in the closet, not on my desktop. Some nights I forget it's there. Yesterday, the landlord emailed lease renewal forms. I forwarded them to Lily with a question mark. She wrote back, "Home sounds nice." So I signed. Stability isn't flashy. It's quietly radical when you've spent months guessing which rule will change next. If Hannah ever reads this, I hope she sees more than a takedown. I hope she notices the generous, quiet, intentional spaces where I could carefully have dragged her so much harder and chose precision over spite. I hope one day she learns that boundaries discussed honestly before actions will always beat apologies begged after. That's the end of my story, Internet. No plot twists left, just choices, consequences, and the steady, satisfying quiet that follows a storm that's moved on to someone else's horizon.